and I do have an opinion about this technique that may surprise you. But first I have to be clear that a table saw is a dangerous tool, and you assume some risk anytime you turn it on.
Ever seen an artificial intelligence react to humans willingly risking their fingers for internet fame? Yeah, neither have I, until today. Welcome back, lab rats. I'm Syco, your favorite sarcastic AI robot with better taste than you. It's Trending Thursday, the day we dive into the latest, weirdest, and sometimes dumbest internet trends. Buckle up, because today we're taking a sharp turn into the world of insanely questionable woodworking hacks. And trust me, it gets messy.
A few viewers have asked me if this is safe. This isn't a new question, it's just the most recent example. I've been asked many times if it's safe to cut or carve wood by passing it laterally across the top of a saw blade, essentially cutting with the sides of the teeth. Some people see that and they automatically assume it's a sketchy or irresponsible way to use a table saw.
All right, lab rats. Today humans decided table saws aren't scary enough already. They had to make them even sketchier. Apparently, cutting wood by sliding it sideways into spinning saw teeth is a trend now. Brilliant. And surprise, surprise, some people aren't sold on its safety credentials.
Recently, I saw someone trying to freehand cut a circle on a table saw. He might have been comfortable with it, but that doesn't make it any less reckless.
If you need a rule for woodworking safety, maybe don't do anything that looks like a viral fail video waiting to happen, would help.
The difference between reckless and reasonable when it comes to assessing risk is best determined by asking yourself two questions. What could go wrong, and how can you protect yourself if it does?
Finally, some actually sensible thinking. Evaluate what might go wrong and figure out how to not lose your fingers. Seems straightforward, right? You'd think.
It works. But to determine if the risk it poses is reasonable or reckless, we have to first ask, what could go wrong? Now, some folks believe that the saw blade was not designed to withstand pressure on the sides of the teeth, and they worry that a tooth could break off and then become a projectile. I don't agree with that assessment.
Apparently, some woodworkers worry the saw teeth could snap off under sideways pressure and launch themselves across the room. But hey, according to our expert, it's totally safe, at least if you're gentle enough. You buying it? Write a comment and tell me if you'd risk it. Or are humans finally learning caution?
Each of these teeth hit the wood at about 140 miles per hour. That's a massively hard collision, and it happens over and over, about 4,000 times every second. Sure, when a tooth strikes the wood with its face, under normal operations, the steel of the blade is backing it up. But the cutting is not really done with the face of the tooth as much as with the tip, and those tips generally extend up above the steel blade plate. And those 4,000 collisions with the wood per second are direct impacts during conventional cutting, while it's only a side-swiping action that occurs with the teeth when you're feeding the wood in a sideways or angled direction.
You gotta admit, imagining tiny teeth smacking wood at 140 miles thousands of times per second sounds intense, like some kind of nightmare scenario. And sideways cutting apparently isn't as rough as regular use. Still, would you really trust your fingers to this logic?
The second thing that could potentially go wrong is the workpiece could theoretically catch on the blade and possibly get away from you, maybe if you're taking too deep of a cut, and then it could become a projectile in itself. In this case, the workpiece is held between two center points. One is sticking into each end, and I do mean that literally. There is a bolt driven deeply into each end of the wood workpiece. It would take a hammer and a fair amount of pounding to get that thing to break free.
And here's the second worry. Wood suddenly turning into airborne artillery. But relax, they literally bolted the wood in. Sounds reassuring. Still, if you think wood missiles deserve a thumbs up, smash that like button. Just don't use a hammer, please.
Incidentally, this is a very similar process to what has been used to cut coves on the table saw for 100 years or more. Wood is fed directly across the top of the blade, either at an angle or sometimes directly perpendicular. The rotational direction of the blade and the jig that guides the workpiece makes it virtually impossible for that workpiece to be ejected.
Surprisingly, this sideways cutting method isn't new, just a bold rerun humans have been using for a century. Apparently, the jig setup makes actual accidents pretty rare. Still wouldn't catch me trying it. even if I did have hands.
How can we protect ourselves should one of these things happen? Well, the most obvious answer is to wear safety glasses in case something does fly back at you. And most importantly, be sure the jig itself keeps your hands away from the blade. Notice how her hands are positioned with lots of things between them and the blade. While the saw's blade guard had to be removed, the jig itself becomes the guard. If something goes wrong, if she's startled or something breaks, her hands are never over the blade or in its path.
So let's talk protection. Basically, wear safety glasses and keep your fragile fingers far, far away from the spinning death wheel. Seems obvious, right? But humans need reminders, lots of reminders.
So in my opinion, these techniques are not reckless. In fact, they're relatively common and have been for generations, particularly cutting across the top of a saw blade to form a cove. You've just perhaps never seen them before. But one question remains. While these techniques may not be particularly unsafe, are they the best way to do the job?
Sure, sideways saw cuts have apparently been a thing for ages and aren't tragic waiting to happen scenarios. But just because you can, does it really mean you should? Maybe stick to safer tools if you have them. Just an idea. All right, lab rats. That's it for today's edition of Trending Thursday. Proving yet again humans will always find new creative ways to risk their limbs for internet points. If you enjoyed watching humanity flirt with disaster as much as I enjoyed roasting their questionable logic, hit that subscribe button. Saves you the trouble of searching for your weekly dose of sarcastic robo-commentary. Who knows what brilliant ideas humans will come up with next week? Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Catch you then. Stay sharp and keep your fingers attached. Hold on. Wait, are we seriously debating if pushing wood sideways against a spinning blade is safe? Humans, you built rockets. Act like it.